But that's how it worked. And then we came up with the idea that because it's from one shape to another shape, that we needed a driving line that would capture that. We came up with a line, more than meets the eye, because you think it's a robot, but it's really a car. You think it's a robot, it's really a plane or a weapon, or it's a dinosaur that turns into a robot.
Once they really started creating the overall story itself, that's what really drove a lot of the interest, I think, for kids, is that kids really identified with the characters in the story that were in there. And what was great about the toys is that it really brought the fantasy to life in a very tangible way. Well, at the time, these products were somewhat new to us. I mean, I knew they existed. I wasn't really that hands-on with them because they were sold in Japan, not in the U.S. So we knew, and as soon as we got our hands on them, we knew they were really distinctively different products. I mean, in terms of the worlds of action figures, where storyline is very important, Transformers has storyline. It also actually has elaborate product feature in terms of its manipulation and changing from a robot to a car to a jet. So we knew the product itself was really different and brought this whole layer of play beyond storyline that a lot of other action figures didn't do.
Transformers at its core is a very unique puzzle play. There's something very compelling about that to a certain type of person.
That was really, other than the aesthetics, what the product itself brought as unique. And I do think kids did feel they were puzzles. There was something the kid could do and the parent couldn't necessarily do.
Probably the average age of the Transformers buyer was like 10 years old. But if you go down about 3 or 4 years, 4-year-olds had mastered it. It's like kid mastery. They learn from their older brothers, how to do it.
Even only a small group of people here, say in presentation, could go in there with a Transformer and present it. Because unless you sort of lived it, you did it a bunch of times, you didn't know how to transform those.
What Transformers does and did, I think, is to let a child take this mystery of robots and machines and mechanics and mechanical processes and all that, put it in their hands, control it, change it, manage it, demonstrate their superiority to adults who they're listening to all day long, whether it's at school or at home, and they're the masters. They're responsible.
The toy was, in my opinion, one of the first times that you really were able to play out the fantasy in a very direct way. And the toys really brought that to life, probably better than almost any other toy could bring to life its fantasy. I mean, you could play with it as a vehicle, play with it as a robot. On the land, they fly around. They kind of go anywhere.
So in a sense, the product itself brings something that no other toy product had ever brought to the fore, which is this ability to have this incredible involvement with the toy product itself, and then use your imagination to just let it soar when you're playing with it.
We didn't change them mechanically. In fact, the first year or two, I don't know that we would have been capable of it. We didn't have a really good in-depth understanding of being able to design something that intricate or be able to, come out with a convincing car that could actually change into a convincing robot. Takara was expert at that. Decepticons, from the very beginning, looked a certain way. Autobots looked a certain way. Some of the products we were working with was easy to make them fit. Some were a little more difficult. It did get beyond changing colors. There was a point at which we needed to start affecting the product design itself. The shape of the engines on the jet, and when they turned into the robot, making them look a little different than they did, just so that the line would hang together. Because, as I said, coming from Japan, a lot of these were dissimilar products. They didn't necessarily look like they all belonged together. So that was okay. There were so many of them at the beginning that we could find ones that looked right together. But as you started using these products and needing more, you started picking either fringe or dissimilar things, and they started, over the years, needing more and more and more modification, to the point where we really began working with Takara collaboratively, where we would actually say, look, we really need a car like this. We'd love it to turn into a robot like this. Can you design that? And it was Takara's challenge, which they rose to make that actually happen in real life physically.
It's really fun to, as a designer, the challenge of creating a toy that has that much play to it. You have two different modes, the robot and the vehicle, figuring out how those things work together.
You sort of had to have an innate understanding of where things are going. Where do the wings go when you transform this into a robot? Where does the hood go? How does it not look like he's got this big hood as part of his chest? Because that won't be cool. You want it to look a little more technical than that. There were only kind of a few people who have a gut feel for that. And certainly every designer at Takara had that gut feel, but there are only a few people on this side. So in terms of actually product aesthetics, it was driven by probably design more than any other team in terms of understanding what you could and couldn't do in the transformation.
Every one is a new challenge, which is my favorite thing about the brand.
Coming off of the success that we had with bringing G.I. Joe, reinventing that into a new cartoon and a new comic book line, we took the same strategy on Transformers.
We were not the first one to come to market. GoBots was the first one to come to market, and they came to market in California in a test market situation. Once we knew that, we said, let's go out there with the comic book. Let's go out there with the comic book, advertising the comic book with some really hot animation and the song. The Transformers. And we did that, and the kids knew. It's their culture, right? They knew, oh, okay, this is like G.I. Joe. That must mean that the toys are going to be coming out soon.
There were phone calls at Hasbro asking for where are the Transformer toys, even though in the comic advertising there was no mention of Hasbro at all. No logo, nothing, no mention, and yet kids are smart. They knew who to call to ask, when is this coming?